the meeting to order. We have board members present. We have Let's do the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Don't have anyone here for open forum public input. So we'll move to approve agenda changes to agenda. We just need a motion to approve. There were no changes.
So move.
Second. Moved by Pearl and second by Schoenfelder to approve the agenda. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
There's no new conflicts of interest that we're aware of, so we'll move to approve consent agenda. The school board will approve official board minutes from May, pay submitted claims. I think that's it. There's just a comma there, is that an accident? Okay.
No, and then it's
Okay.
what they are. and
Okay.
then-
A is to approve May minutes, B is to approve the monthly claims, C is approve MOU for Our Home Incorporated Partnership Agreement, D is approve DSS contract for auxiliary placement, E is to approve a Vera contract for nursing services for 25-26 school year, F is to approve summer maintenance workers, Chad Jadozi, $15.34 per hour,
That
Daryl,
should be 94.
okay, $15.94. Daryl Bray, $16.85 per hour, as needed. Max Bax, $11.50 per hour. Sean Deckert, yeah, $11.50 per hour. Isaac Solik, $11.50 per hour, as needed. Randy Norgard, $11.50 per hour, as needed. G is to approve OHI, SPED, ESY, summer school, and elementary reading camp teachers. June is Jennifer Bartelt, Jeanette Vandenhoek. July is Chad Jadozi and Heather Andera, all at their hourly per diem rate. Lynette Gerlach and Kara Toribio, $30 per hour. Julie Reichert, Carrie Oakley, Brittany Schoenfelder, Megan Conrad, Savannah Meyer, Crystal Travis, and Hannah Hone at $30 per hour. Robin Hone and Christy Bieber at $20 per hour. H is to declare items as surplus. The list of items is numerous and are included in the board packet. I is to void checks. The following checks outstanding from the 23-24 school year will be voided. Check number, did you have a check number?
Yes, 65050.
65, what?
65050
Okay, to Gwen Weir
for
in the,
3420.
in the amount of $34.20.
And then the
And-
other one was not Billy Maxwell's, make it mine. 32156.
312.
32156
32156, okay,
for 41240.
412, what was it?
$412.40.
Okay. To make it mine, you said? Okay. All right. If there aren't any questions about any of those, I just need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved by Leishman, second by Nebo. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
All right, we'll move to high school principal report.
Good evening, everyone. It's kind of, it's busy for me, but quiet in the building, last couple of weeks. After school got out, we got through semester tests okay. I thought everything went really well. We got the student registrations turned in that last week, and then that's what I've spent the last 2 weeks doing. We got the master schedule for next year built. I'm about 10 freshmen away from having all high school schedules put into the Infinite Campus system so that they'd be able to see their schedules. So we're in really good shape in terms of moving that way. In that week after school, Peg and I got the report cards and all of the standardized test scores mailed out, and we handed out the pre-ACT results to the students in the week before they left as well. So everybody, with that, all the 9th and 10th graders that took the pre-ACT, they got their stuff sent home. We got that just in time, and so I don't remember if I got to report that during the May meeting or not, but I was really, really glad we did that. There's a lot of positives that are gonna come from that. I think one just being the buy-in by the freshmen and sophomores having taken the pre-ACT, the ACT prep kind of stuff we're gonna do. I think their experience with that's gonna make them want to engage a little bit more with that a couple times a week, so that's gonna be really good. As well as I think us and the staff, we got a lot of good intel out of it, and now we'll know the points of growth we wanna try and get throughout the year. So really a lot of positives with that throughout the whole deal. So we got a good plan in place for next year, and excited to kind of put it into action. But other than that, you know, it's pretty quiet this time of year, so we've got a lot done. And any questions for me? All right.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Just kind of echo Cole's thoughts there. We wrapped up the year. Things went well. Was able to kind of get the schedule all set for us, and had some time, kind of put that out in the spring so that teachers could look at it and we could kind of talk through it. Different things that they would pick up on or notice, and feel good that that's in place. Got everybody checked out, and then on our last day we had our new curriculum had arrived, and so we were able to bring in a rep with that to help everybody unpack the new ELA curriculum and kind of start processing what that's going to look like, as well as some phonics curriculum that we're adding in with that, so teachers could get that and have that for the summer to kind of look through. And then our hope is that we do a little PD in July to kind of look at that. And so I feel like that got off on a good note. Much like Mr. Knipling was saying, I've entered the classes on Infinite Campus, and so those are built for the rosters are in there for teachers. That's all set, and just kind of doing end of the year wrap up things. So things are in a good spot here. We kicked off our summer reading program, where we instituted that again this year. So that started last week. I was able to get a grant from Parks and Area Foundation, and so that's funding that. And so when you approve those teacher salaries, that's where that comes from. And so that's good. We have, I think, right at 45 kids in there. We have it set up in 2 sessions, so we do like an early elementary with our kindergarten first grade. Well, it'll be like next year's first and second graders, and then a third and fourth graders. And so like a session for an hour, and then a second session for an hour. So, and then we're also doing that at the Colony in a couple week sessions there. And so it's been good to get that back going and offer that so that we can continue building on our reading. So that's kind of the main gist of what we got going elementary wise. From an activities standpoint, wrapped up state track. This year we didn't have anybody at state golf. Softball team, made it to the SODAC 16, and that's where their season ended. But it was a good spring. I think our track team did really well at the state meet, represented, and had a lot of success there. So that was fun to see for those kids done it that way. And then, no rest for the weary, we're right into summer workouts. And so summer workouts started last Monday. We have over 80 kids signed up in 6th through 12th grade. So it's about 40 middle schoolers and about 40 high schoolers that we have signed up for that. And that's going 3 to 4 days a week. And so it's a busy place as always. Kids are coming and going and working hard. So that's kind of where we're at with all those things. So any questions on any of that?
How much did you get from the foundation?
$4,500. So that'll pay for the staff, and then enough for a little bit of supplies. We do like some incentives or different like treats at the end of the week to kind of make it fun for everybody. So
Can anyone do that?
we didn't open it up to 5th grade, but yeah, we did open it up to all of our. Initially, we started with invites for students, and we didn't have an overwhelming number. So then I did send out emails to all families saying if you're interested, you're welcome to attend. So, yep.
There was a target demographic.
There was. Yep, we wanted to be very intentional about what we were looking at, so we utilized our state assessment scores and then their star reading scores. So we use that data to guide our selection process, and then as well as teacher recommendations. That was like our first wave, and then just with summer, not everybody could attend and had different things going on. So at that point, then we just opened it up to anybody that would want to come and get some extra reading in. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr.
I don't have much to report on other than I put in your packet just a reminder about the Associate School Board School Administrators Joint Conference that typically happens in that first week of August. So I know that's a busy time of year for all of you, but something for the consideration. They have yet to release a schedule and actual, keynotes and topics and things like that. I suspect by July board meeting, like always, there'll be something in there to share. And then at the July board meeting, you can decide because there's early registration to that. So something that you wanted to even do, half a day, 1 day out of the actually 2 days, it doesn't matter. Just think about that. So that's really all I have at this stage of the game. So we'll put it on your radar.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we will move to discussion items. Discussion of item A is to review policy manual. The following ASBSD policies are being presented for review and a first reading for the district consideration. GCA-R1, GCBB, GCBCC, GCBD, GCBDA, GCBDB. So those are in the packet for your review.
Professional staff positions, it's a job description, that's the artifact, GCA artifact 1, and then you have professional staff supplementary pay plans. That's reflected in our negotiated agreement. We have tax shelter annuity program, don't see anything there for suggestions as far as what we outline. We have personal staff leaves and absences, and the following policies that are after that basically mirror and reflect what is aligned in our negotiated agreement as far as any of the leaves that affect staff. So what you see in those policies, that doesn't necessarily, it was pretty similar as to what was actually in the Assembly Associate School Board's policy manual, but then I took the liberty of crafting it to make sure that it included all of our information that's in the negotiated agreement. I just said, Matt, when you came in here, you asked a question about the sabbatical and shared that information. And it does reflect what is in the teacher's negotiated agreement. So other than that, that's really all there is for those first reading of policies there. So.
Okay. Anybody have questions? All right, we'll move to discussion item B, policy review, second reading. Those policies are GBL, GBM, GBM-R1, GCA, GCB, GCBA. There weren't any other questions.
I did include an updated GBRM1 based on a conversation last month, a question about rights to participation. And clarification, and that again lines with the negotiated agreement. So I did reflect that change, just like on page 2, it says rights of participation. And that was more about the PEA coming to the table at their staff member request.
Okay.
So I changed that based on our last question.
Anybody have questions? All right, we'll move to discussion item C. The following ASBSD policies are being presented for final review and adoption and inclusion to the district's policy manual. GBE, GBEB, GBEB-R1, GBEC, and GBG. So if there aren't any questions, I just need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Schoenfelder and second by Leishner. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, discussion item D is an update on maintenance facility.
I put in your packet there, I'm some direction or guidance, I guess, from you guys in the school board. I'm struggling here with making connections to Ethan Co-op Lumber. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've made, a couple emails, constant, I'll call you back or voicemail, agreed to meet a day, and that day came and went, and no contact, no information, no feedback, and not even a day or two after the fact about I missed that, sorry. I don't know what you want me to do, you know, to get some information with respect to the conversation that we've had for the last 3 months about perhaps a maintenance facility. I just happened to take a phone call today from Jim Weber out of Clear Blue, and so I picked his brain a little bit and what perhaps they could do for that and help us out with if they're even in that market. And he said kind of, sort of, but you know, they do, I don't know, for lack of better terms, they have a steel building, you know, that they do, but it's it's like a Cleary or, I don't know, a Morton or, I don't know, give me a name brand, it's one of them type of deals. So he said, but as far as the development of it, he said they're kind of slammed right now. He said, but they'd be more than willing to come down, set a date, and further conversation, look at it, and then go through a development process as far as, you know, if you recall the process and facilitate, what do you want it to look like, you know, go with the initial steps to give you some sort of representation, one, drawing-wise, and then two, even with some high-fly numbers as to perhaps maybe what this could cost based on current market. And then if that's something that the board felt strongly about or positive about, wanted to push even further, then, you know, they would take that to a next level, because then they'd have to, sharpen their pencils, their drawings, and it would cost, you know, that's where you sign a contract with them to go through the whole development process. They become your, essentially, I don't know, architect or whatever. And remember, codified law says if they design it, they can't build it, you know. And if somebody else designs it, then they can, you know, build it. But he'd help put the bid package, specs, and all that stuff together. I asked him what that's gonna cost, and he said, probably looking at, for the first phase of that, to get you something idea conceptually, he says probably about $7,500, and then when the next step takes place, if you wanted to move forward with that, then you're probably looking at, you know, anywhere from, you know, a total cost of 12 to 15. Just depends on how much, you know, how big, what you're looking at to kind of concept. So in the absence of anything else to share for you or with you, because I haven't had a conversation with Ethan Co-op Lumber about ideas, thought processes. And he never, I think I told you that I shared it the last couple times, he never did find what he had created. How many years ago? Long time ago, Craig. Yeah, so I don't know what, I mean, you guys tell me.
How long have you been trying to get a hold of them?
The last 3 months.
Okay, well, then I feel like you can move on to someone else.
I mean, I've made several phone calls.
I
And we've
feel
talked
like-
probably 2 times on the phone. Yep, what do you, you know, I'm just, it's high-fly stuff, you know, and trying to agree to meet, even come to an agreement on a date, come Tuesday, this date. Well, the one time that I could get him to go to that far, he said, well, I'll be in Parkston, I will swing by the school, and it was a Tuesday of something, I don't even recall. Well, that date came and went.
You have other people who are interested
As far as
to help
having a
build it?
conversation, yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, Pitts Construction said they would,
Mhm.
he'd come down and talk to me, so. And even though he said he's slammed, he said I can fit it in and just, you know, start something. But the whole point is, and that's even what we wanted to get out of Dan, or Ethan Co-op Lumber, what is this perhaps gonna cost to bring this to this conceptual representation, you know, and that wouldn't even be the point of maybe some numbers, but I think, you know, Pitts could take that to the next level if that was desired, so. But
I have no concern with Pitt's doing it all, you know, they're gonna do a fantastic job and have an outstanding facility. I just wonder if that's the kind of facility we're looking for. I mean, if it's overkill.
Jim clarified that right away. He
Yeah.
said, we don't do pole barns.
Right.
So-
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're not having, well, finding anybody, I'd be fine with going out and finding whoever, and even contacting the Morton or the Cleary or whatever, because I mean, it's just a
Menards, I mean, there's.
Menards or, yeah.
Well, and
It's just a big garage is what we're looking for,
yeah,
right?
the guy that I mentioned, you know, who built that Mount Vernon facility, you know, that was a 7-stall, I mean, it was 55 by 88. You know, he designed it all, he came with all the specs, he did it, and he gets all his stuff from Menards. I mean, that's where he goes to do that stuff. And on Summit, I think Summit runs that gamut too, from, this basic bullshit to, holy smokes, this is really pretty good. So the only way to get that process, if rather than reach out to somebody, I mean, we could go through an RFP process, and we're just gonna advertise and put it in the paper and, what we're looking for with that respect. And I don't care, because that's what we did for, the project too.
Well, then at
So-
least you know who is willing and has time and
Yeah,
fit it
absolutely,
in.
And on that construction management concept, type of deal, but either way, I mean, I can make some more phone calls, and I haven't reached out to anybody else because I wanted to be respectful of trying to continue the conversation with Ethan Coaplunker, and I just get a little
3
frustrated.
months is a long time.
I get a little frustrated there, so. And I'll try one more time.
Does Parks and Lumber do anything?
I haven't talked to Austin about that.
It'd be worth a call.
Yeah,
Maybe he can,
Mhm.
certainly get materials, maybe
Yeah.
he could have
Sure.
contractors. that would-
yeah, if it's something that he wants to tackle.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in his scope, but it's worthy of a conversation, so. Okay, I was just looking for some feedback from you guys, so. Okay, appreciate that.
All right, discussion item E is to review handbook changes. We'll go over the student handbook changes submitted by the principals.
So I got a couple sheets of paper here, one being, I think I emailed you not long after the last board meeting, the proposed high school schedule that will kind of come through with the changes and stuff like that. And then the second page is the couple of handbook changes that I have as well. Has everybody got one? Yep. All right, so just basically, on the first page, not a whole lot's changed, but to kind of understand what we did. So SRB, that was the daily SRB we had, was 40 minutes long. And so rather than having a daily, student responsibility block for 40 minutes, we're going to have a full block every other day, which is what it would have been like 3 years ago. Part of the reason, like if you're wondering why the change back, really struggled, especially in the middle school, to fill all 8 electives. Like, it's just really hard to find that many elective courses to keep the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade busy for 8 blocks. Just was running out of classes. Also, too, the students, just the feedback we'd gotten was they sometimes say that 40 minutes, like, you just kind of get going, and then you'd be done. And so they really kind of longed for the block, so we'll go back to it. The SRB, the full SRB used to be in the morning. I'm kind of a big believer in the instructional classes should be in the mornings, and so when you had an SRB second block every other day, you're taking away one of the best prime times in terms of students' brain and when they're most ready to learn, and so we're putting it at the end of the day. With the idea being is you would have had 3 classes, so you should know what your homework is, get it done before you go home. Also, if we have early outs, for now rather than losing instructional time, we are cutting into the study hall, so to speak. So 4th block, every orange day will be our SRB. Where the old SRB used to be, I took that and I shortened it down by about 10 minutes, and we're going to relabel it as an advisory period. And it's going to be more intentional. Rather than it being study hall time for the kids, we have some things we are going to do during the advisory period from 105 to 135 every day. You can see Monday, Friday, we are going to do this character development series called Bring Your A Game. It's something that the state has kind of pushed out, and I really, really like it. There's 7 A skills that they say are important in the workplace, like some of them, for example, appearance, attitude, accountability, ambition, but it's 7 A words, and each one we're going to kind of spend 2-3 weeks on trying to build. And then there's a module series where you kind of put those into action that you can get for free from the state. We're going to do that in the second semester. Every Tuesday and Thursday is where we're going to do our standardized test practice. That's going to be a lot of smaller, like basically 0 stakes quizzing. So like take 20 questions that would be on an ACT, and you give them a 20 question English test one day and then a 20 question math test the next. And so they're going to get every single week, they're going to be getting pre-ACT and for the middle schoolers, smarter balanced practice to kind of help them with the standardized test. And we will get a lot of feedback off of that. We're going to build it so that it's in a Google form so we can immediately see the results. pass them out and use it as a formative way to keep assessing them as we go. And then Wednesdays, we have a ton of programs, sports clubs that are trying to meet. Wednesdays will always be that. And then when we don't have, if they don't have a meeting that day, that's where they get a little extra study help. So we have a lot of intentionality to what we're doing and how we're doing it. Each instructional block went from 80 back to 85. We gave 5 minutes back to each block. And so, hoping for the best. I think it's going to be good. Any questions about the schedule? Okay. On the second one, just a couple of handbook changes. One being, we have quite a few students that are enrolled either in dual credit or what we call DIAL. You know, any foreign language, for example, is an online course. And there's quite a few that they take as they get older. There's a health and science careers, there's an intro to education, there's an ag business management, leadership and communication courses, things like that. And so all of those, what we have found is from time to time you'll have a kid that, because they're online, we're going to have a weekly check-in. And every week if we check in and we find that they are not keeping up the pace, every once in a while you have a kid that you'll get an email from the teacher and they'll say, hey, they're about 3-4 weeks behind, right? And so we're going to try and avoid that happening anymore. And if it does happen, I want it to be in writing that you could be put on academic probation for being behind in a course, just like as if you were failing the course, because they're failing to keep up. That's the deal there. It's a self-paced course, and so you might not be having a failing grade, but if you haven't turned in the last 10 assignments, you know, you might as well be failing. If you were in class, those would all be missing in zeros. So we want it to kind of be fair and equitable in terms of, you know, what's going on, whether it's an online course or not. Same thing with dual credits as well. And we kind of already do the dual credits. They stay up to snuff because they don't want to lose their senior privs. But for the younger kids, we want to make sure they have something that little carrot over their head. Second part, I'm just updating it with the change of times. You know, the cheating needs to talk about AI and plagiarism. It really didn't say anything about it before. You can kind of see where it was highlighted. That's new. So if it doesn't have highlighting behind it, that's what was there. If it has highlighting, that's what we're changing. And so just really to talk about the use of AI to replace the original student work and what could and could not happen if you choose to do that. So I wanted something written in the handbook so that way anybody ever calls me to the handbook, I can say it's right here. So, any questions with either of those changes?
The block scheduling, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
The diversity of courses that kids potentially have to take have we been able to give most kids the choices where they had to make a decision between 2 different courses, and because that's the way the schedule is?
You know, like building a schedule is my nightmare. It's my biggest challenge every single year. And we do the best we can. I wish I could say that every single course a kid wants to take, they get. But we've been, like there's a couple kids that really wanted a junior senior course. And so, like, for example, there's 2 kids that are going to take online pre-calc, even though we offer it in-house, because I know they really, really, really want this course, right? And so we do just about anything we can to get them the schedule they desire. And then I've moved around, you know, the original, like I think Mrs. Bartel's probably seen 6 different renditions of the master schedule as I try and, you know, wiggle and wobble and get it to where it goes. So we're close. I wouldn't say every kid gets exactly what they want. The biggest challenge, you know, is if it's a one-time offered class, not stacking a bunch of those, you know, like a high school band versus egg mechanics. Wouldn't work because you're going to lose some kids one way or the other, and then they have to choose. So you really try and give them a balance of like the core classes, like say a chemistry in the junior year. You offer a couple of chemistries, and then you offer one of them against that, so that way if they want this elective, then they can go get the other chemistry. You know, you do the best you can with that. So we're trying. I know some people will probably be bummed, but I think everybody got pretty darn close. The nice thing about this year is by giving them the master schedule and saying build your schedule off of it, a lot of those have already been figured out and fixed, rather than me having to try and fix them in the middle of the summer with nobody around. A kid would come in and say, I'm trying to sign up for this and this and I can't. And so if I thought I could move it, I did. And if I thought it was impossible, I said, I'm sorry, I picked something else. There'll always be next year. And so I always try to take notes on next year, not trying to stack. Like, for example, this year, Media 1 stacked against Course. And so there's a lot of kids that, you know, they sign up for both. So I'm putting them in Course because I know next year they can take Media 1, because next year I'll say, don't stack those 2 against each other next year. You know, do the best we can. So the ones you really try and make sure you do right by are the juniors and the seniors, and freshmen and sophomore, well, you got a few years. If we screw it up, you can figure it out later. So.
And it'd be easy to say, well, just move that. I'm telling you what, having done that for 20 years, what he's doing, the matrix, the conflict matrix is you move one and you think there's little implications because we'll work on that kid's schedule. The roll down on that is like you just threw 57 other kids out of the boat that you had no idea that you were going to throw out of the boat. So it's just sitting there staring at this spreadsheet and in your head knowing that who's taking what by looking at their choices. Oh, I can't do that because of that. Move that, that's going to change that. That's going to change that, and that's going to change that. It's going to change. It's like,
And it's not perfect. I know there's a couple, like, because of it, like, you'll have some classes that have 10 and some classes that have 20, you know, and you'd love to have 15 and 15, but you do the best you can, and I think it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good, and I think everybody's gonna get pretty close to what they want, so I'm happy with it, and also happy to almost be done with it. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, next discussion item is Maxwell Bar
You have any?
insurance coverage.
I do not have any changes.
Oh, sorry,
to the
Adam.
book.
okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to leave you out.
Nope.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good. I have one more handout I was able to get, just to be able to go along with the sheet that they had given you. This is just the breakdown of what each building and the cost of, on the summary or statement of value sheet. That just breaks it down, so when it shows location one, it would be on back on the statement of values section, it would show what the, sorry.
Third page in on the first handout.
So just to, with the renewal this year, it's about a 20% increase, and almost all of that is on the property side of the business. And in going through it, I've talked to Pat a number of times and Craig, and I've called our broker that we use for the EMC, and another broker that writes for a company that used to write schools, and just across the board, there's just not a market out there really other than EMC right now for school policies. They had quoted a cooperative up in the northeast corner of the state. There's, 20 schools in that? 26. And he was like, he thought it'd be a good trial run to see what is out there, if anybody would quote it, would this or that. And I think they sent out 9 quotes or 9 feelers, and 8 of them declined it, and 1 of them would write only a portion of it, but not the rest of it. And so it's just not, I hate to say it, it's just not a great market right now. Like I said, almost all of the increase was pretty much due to the property side of things. And that went up to, I think it's 110,000 right now. So in looking at it, and I know Pat had talked to Craig a little bit, we have a $50,000 deductible for our fire, flood, those, anything other than wind and hail, we have a $50,000 deductible. For wind and hail, it's $75,000 per building, this and that. So in looking at, and I talked to our underwriter a little bit, like, is there any reason, if we have a property that's under 50,000, do you even have it listed, and do you, now granted, that's why I gave the second sheet, do you pay for those things on the insurance side of things if it's not going to cover it anyway, if it's going to be under the deductible? So I just kind of went through, or have that on there, and I think it's probably about $600-700, something like that you would save by taking those off. But if it's not going to pay for it anyway, does it make sense to have those on the on the policy, you know? So if you just, we'll go through the property first and then I'll touch base on the other ones. But these here, like building or location 1, building 1, that's at your alternative classrooms. So that's over at our home. That's just the personal property, the stuff you have there for in that facility.
That's costing $67.
Correct.
Yep, got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And so then you go down Crow's Nest. We have that that's on the other side, the old one. That's $23,000. Well, that's costing $40 or $47. But in the event of a loss, you're not getting anything for it anyway, right? So ticket booth, that's just a little ticket booth out in front. $15,600. Same thing. Property in the open, the football stadium, lights and bleachers. We have that, it's 1.1 million for that. Obviously that needs to have coverage on it. The property in the open, the track. We have coverage on the track right now, $340,000. Now, what can damage a track, right? Well, vandalism, this or that, but you know, Craig and I were talking a little bit, what's it cost to resurface a track?
If I had to pull the trigger today, it'd be between 170 and 180.
Okay. So those are, I mean,
if in an event like that, you're not going to do the whole thing.
right.
They're going to come and repair what was damaged, whether a tree landed it, somewhere,
Flip the bleachers
or,
on it.
or some
Because that was one.
12-foot cattle tank comes from Baumgars and flies all the way across the deal
Yep.
and lands on the track. Like
Gouges
it
it, right.
did on my pickup.
Pickup.
Then it'll, you're gonna fix that part of it, right? I mean, that's really what that amounts, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had it on, we put it on right after we redid it, thinking, well, what if somebody vandalizes it? What if somebody gets out there with a vehicle and tears around and rips it up? That's something that's, you can continue to have coverage on it. But that's something as well, is it something we need to have or would want to have on it?
$50,000 deductible is
Yep.
is prohibitive. I mean, the damage is probably gonna be less than that, so you're gonna end up paying for it anyway. I don't know.
Correct.
But do you pay for a coverage that it's not gonna be covered anyway? I mean, in
Right.
the event that it's over that, okay, yeah, but I don't
Yeah.
know, the likelihood of that happening, I don't know. It's
And
kind
the
of
whole
plain
track
old
would
world.
almost have to, to resurface the whole thing, it would have to
It'd be
pretty
pretty
much
bad.
all be,
It'd be pretty bad.
yeah.
Can a softball-sized hailstorm ruin a track?
I suspect it could, from the depression perspective, because that asphalt that is under there, the longevity of when that asphalt was laid, I mean, even oil and that, that breaks down over
Right.
time.
Right.
So would it leave that depression? Perhaps, but there again, they're very astute at coming in and cutting 18 by 18, 12 by 12, 24 by 24, and even to the point where, if the asphalt was damaged, they come, they cut that out, they dig it, pour asphalt back in there, pack it hard, replace that with the top coat that's needed, and done deal.
Yeah.
So
I would guess the top coat would probably be damaged, kind of like shingle. If it was softball size and driven down, it's probably going to knock off, and you might not see it right away, but after a winter and some moisture and this and that, and then it would probably start
it'll wear
showing up.
over time. Yeah. I mean, in my experience with that is the MVP or track in Mount Vernon when I was there. That shelter belt that lies to the west, which is probably 40 feet away from the track. Well, around the first curve, it erupted and couldn't figure out what it was. Like, what is the deal there? There was a root, a tree root, that came better part of 60 foot actually, underneath the 18-inch curb. And we went down 36 inches to do all the fill and compaction, poured an 18-inch curb. So that root found its way all the way there, found its way to the top, and erupted the first set lane 7 and 8 in probably a 8-foot by 8-foot square. I mean, so
Yeah,
it can happen, but they came and fixed that one spot. So, yeah.
right. And then pretty much the bulk of almost all of the values comes into our building here, building at 43,828,000. And then the personal property inside of 9,267,180. Next one.
Mike,
What are we paying for that
Yep.
one?
how do you get those values?
Those values, we had square footage wise, about price per square foot, that's what they were kind of basing off. I think it was around that $275 to $300 a square foot. And then the last portion of that was when we added on whatever the cost was when we added the new part on last year. So that's a number that they kind of come up with price per square foot, gyms, this and that. Now, I have talked to them as well. Right now, because it's a blanket type coverage, we have 55 million blanket coverage over the whole school. We're at 100% replacement cost value. So we're insuring it. We're saying we're insuring it at 100% to value. They might be willing to look at going down to 90%. Well, if they allowed us to go to 90%, that means we could, if you decided for premium wise for this or that, we could look at lowering our total insured value maybe to 90%. So all of these would be like at 90% of replacement cost. When you take the total cost for the property insurance, we're at about, just for a reference, we're at about $2,000 per $1 million of coverage. So for every $1 million of coverage, it's costing about $2,000. So,
Yeah.
which it's,
And that, from an industry perspective, within the educational realm, that's not out of line.
yeah, it's not crazy. And I said, you look at your homeowners, this and that, but it's a little different because homeowners don't have a $75,000 wind hail deductible or a $50,000 all other peril. But a lot of carriers in the commercial world have went to a 1% deductible per building. So if you looked at a 1% deductible just on this building, our main building, I mean, you'd be at $438,000 for a deductible for wind hail. Well, that's nuts, and that's not, well, I don't know if either of them are real feasible, but so putting it into perspective, it is, I mean, it's a large number, but we are covering a very big building. And I'd say, compared to some other school districts, it's nice to have it in one building where you have most of your schools in one building and you don't have 4 buildings spread out and they're all, $4, $5, $6, $10 million a piece and they're all in one location. Then you're looking at a lot more in a deductible because it's each building. So, greenhouse, we have that insured for $117,000. I think we bought it for about what, $185 or $90
By the time we
back.
got the construction of it was with that.
Yeah.
The materials were 60 and then the construction on top. Sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say 60 or 70.
Yeah. Next one is the property in the open, the sign out front, $38,000 on that sign and the board. And then we have property in the open playground equipment. Obviously, that's gonna have to, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's gonna have to be adjusted when that gets put in. So even thinking of offsetting some of the costs, if we remove some of it, it might offset some of the costs of adding the playground equipment in once it's done. Cause what will that figure roughly be around?
I mean, all told, the equipment in of itself that ever got destroyed, both apparatuses and all the ancillary support pieces out there, you're probably somewhere between 150 and 170 as a total cost,
Yeah,
just for the equipment.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, equipment shed out there, we have almost 90,000 on that, and then the personal property inside. Now, Craig said the personal property, you don't keep a lot of stuff in there anymore because of the
I
rodents.
cleaned it out.
Okay.
I mean, most of it was junk anyway, but very rarely ever. The only thing that sits out there on a, I would say, a 9-month basis is our covers for our snow equipment and the snow equipment in itself. So the broom eventually ends up out there, the snow blower ends up out there. The covers for those two pieces of equipment ends up out there. And the rest of the stuff that's stored out there, even in the lean-to side, honestly, there's a lot of stuff out there that has little to no value.
Okay.
It's kind of a holding pen right now.
We're talking about the blue shed out
Yes,
there?
Yes,
Yep.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yep.
So the content, $30,000 worth of content, I can promise you there's not $30,000 worth of content in that facility. And the fact
Right.
that it was.
Because I think that's what we used to have was the mats and the hurdles,
It
the
was.
pole vault
Yeah,
pits and the
yeah,
hurdles,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what was
But we
stored
don't
in
store
there.
any of that stuff
Okay.
in there anymore, so.
And where does the 89,000 come from?
That's the shed.
Oh, I know, but
That was based off of
What do you
some
mean, you went?
square footage and just building a shed.
cost, new
Yeah,
cost.
New, yeah,
Yeah.
replacement costs for sure.
yeah.
Is that worth 89? No, I'll agree with you 100%.
$89.
But you know, that's another one too of, do you keep that on if it's 75,000 wind and hail, if that would get blown over, you know, you're at that.
But in the same token, on this page, it's costing you $180.
Right,
So
so,
what do you save?
well,
I don't know. I mean, I know it's.
so you get $14,000 if it would totally, well, that might be for $189, that's,
Oh,
yeah. But if it's under, I mean, if it's under those, the other values, you know, some of those, I would say at this point, it's kind of a no-brainer to just take those off and take the savings, even, albeit not a lot of savings, but
right.
just, yeah. And then the rest of those, I believe, are just the
It's
two
it's
colony
content.
schools.
And it's nothing but
Contents.
content.
Yep,
So that's school district property lying within the realms of that physical property.
yep, and so then that shows just a total at the end, the combined total of 55,011,203. So, is that something you'd want me to see if we could do 90%, just to see what that would be? You know, I think when I did some of the math earlier, it would be about 6 million. If you took that total value of 55 million, 90%, it'd be like 49,500. Might save you 10, you know, 10.5, something like that, or in premium.
Mhm.
But just something to, I guess, think about, discuss if that is. And I can check and see if it is an option. Doesn't mean we have to do it, but at least if it's an option, it would be a way to save a little bit of premium on those and still maintain replacement cost. So you'd still remain your replacement cost. It would just be if there's a total loss, if you're only insuring it for 90%, you're only gonna get paid 90%. Does that make sense?
Of the replacement.
Of whatever value we put. If we said we're gonna insure our school for 40 million, and they're charging us for that, if there's a partial damage, this and that, they're not gonna knock 10% off of that. They will replace the roof, they'll do this and that. But if there's a total loss, you're only gonna get 40 million for it. You're not gonna get 43 of what we would have before. So, but yeah. You guys have any questions on the property side of things?
The rest of those, you know, your cyber, your general liability, your
Yep.
business auto, commercial umbrella, your linebackers, there's very rarely any ever change any of those.
Very little. Business auto, maybe some if you've swapped out some vehicles, this and that, or have had a bunch of deer claims or this or that, you might get a little bit of a raise in those. Just for everybody's reference, the linebacker portion, people don't always understand what a linebacker is, but that's the coverage essentially for you guys. It's kind of like a directors and officers, but it's for the board. That gives you the protection of being on the board, making decisions if anybody came back and tried suing you. That's what it's there for. The umbrella also goes over and above the linebacker coverage as well. And I think our umbrella right now is a $4 million umbrella.
4 million.
Yep. On that there, the SIR, that's, if we would have to dip into the umbrella, that is a $10,000 retention or deductible if we would have to go into the umbrella side of things. General liability, that is up just not very much, but adding more square footage to our facility as well. That, the liability kind of gets added, or the property gets added on right away. The liability kind of comes after the fact next year when we redo that as far as the square footage. And it also has to do with students and this and that. That's how the liability comes up, or how they factor the premium on the liability. It's all the different exposures, the number of bleachers you have, or this and that, the number of gyms, the number of students, staff, all of those. That's how they factor into the liability portion of it. Cyber, they added that a few years ago. That's mainly to help protect the business manager and people that are maintaining the records of the employees and also some of the kids that come in-house. Not a huge risk at the school, but there is still a risk of some of that personal information that could get out. And on that cyber liability, just so people understand, it's not they don't pay people that money. It's to help pay to defend you, the school, to send out notifications to let them know that their credit had gotten leaked or this or that, or their information has gotten out. It's to help bring people in, help get it organized, send out notifications to those people that there's been a breach or this or that. So the commercial inland marine, that's going to cover, people always say we don't have any boats, right? But that covers like your lawnmowers or snow equipment. It covers some computer stuff. So when the computers leave the school, there's coverage for those when they're out and about. And I believe that has a $500 deductible on those, so you can get a lower deductible on some of that stuff that isn't just under the property side of things. Yeah, and then the business auto, we have $1 million limits, combined single limits, and then that also rolls under our umbrella as well, which would probably be the biggest risk factor on the liability side, is people out on the road having a car accident, this and that. So other than that, do you guys have any other questions in regards to the...
Mike, is it always, on buildings, is it always the replacement cost? I mean, can you write for a cash value?
I can check with them and see if they would do an ACV value. But for the most part, they've went replacement cost. Just truthfully, it doesn't seem anymore like there's... The only reason they're going ACV is because they're saying we don't like how old your roof is or this or that, and we're just saying you're going straight actual cash value. And so, I mean, I can sure check with them, but the pricing to me, from seeing some of, home carriers, farm carriers saying we're going ACV on roofs and this and that, we're not really seeing any much of a savings on that, just because they still want you to insure them almost to that value, but now they're just going to go ACV on it. So they still want you to insure that building for whatever the value is, up very close. They might let you go a little below 80% on the buildings, but they aren't going to let you insure the building for 40% actual cash value and just say, just pay us this amount, But I could ask them and see if they...
Just curious.
But my fear is that they might start saying everything is actual cash value and not replacement cost, with different trends in the insurance world where they're starting, especially on roofs, saying things are going to be actual cash value. It's not going to be replacement cost till 30 years or 20 years, whatever it is. But I could sure check with them on that. Usually when they start saying we're going ACV, it's because of the age of your building, and they don't want to give you coverage anymore because it's replacement cost coverage because of the age of the building. We have some other commercial carriers that if it isn't built after 1980, they won't write anything but ACV coverage on it. Unless you went in and totally gutted it and pretty much made it a brand new building, but you have to prove that you did that, then they might give you replacement cost on it. But
You're gonna kind of go on depreciation schedules on that, a lot of information, background information, how it was built. Are we talking CMU, or are we talking, what kind of, infrastructure that's, within the facility like that to come up with an ACV, value to that. So, there's a lot of things in play there that just even ask the question. You can always ask the question, but they're gonna say, well, give me this,
Right.
this about, in order to make an assessment as to what is that ACV.
right, what is the ACV value of this
I don't know.
building? Right. So,
I think the question at hand here, you see the totality of the insurance coverages for all aspects of what it is to do business as a school district, 138,710. And it seems shocking and it seems horrifying, especially when comparison to pre-COVID numbers. It was a fraction of that number, but that's how I think the industry has changed, and the fact that the losses that EMC or any other insurance coverage carrier, State Farm, pick one, who does all kinds of things. I don't know that there's a logical way to get out from underneath the premiums that you're being charged right now, especially when this is the only carrier in the state of South Dakota. You can say, well, is that case? That's a monopoly. Well, I don't care what you call it. Bottom line is, you had an example there where they sent out to 9 different vendors, and 8 of them said, no, thank you. You can't get anybody to write it in the state of South Dakota, and not just Parkston. This is applicable to 151 school districts in the state of South Dakota.
and there are a lot of school districts that ended up getting non-renewed
Yes.
by them because of age of building, because of this,
That
that.
ACV value thing came in.
And then you start going from here to what I call a surplus lines specialty market because you can't get it anywhere else. You're going to pay probably double or triple, and still have probably the 1% deductible, not a flat 75, and it's not pretty.
We kind of, Mike and I lived that. We both sit on the board of our home, and that got pretty scary, and it got horrifying in a hurry because that exactly happened.
Right. Yeah, and what they were insuring their building for wasn't near what we were, but about the same premiums.
Yeah.
So it's it's not pretty, but I do feel they still. As far as school policies go, even when there were 2 or 3 that were out there, I feel like EMC, of all 3, had the most comprehensive school policy package. But yeah, when you're the only one, now you're absorbing everybody's business and trying to get through of not having major losses when you insure every school in the state, or pretty close to. It's difficult. But I know the last 2 years, the underwriter had said they have had good years in the school program. So hopefully we can have one more good year and things can hopefully start straightening out, turning around. But
I
incentive or
would say-
rebate talk about that? Because that's what you're just
Yep.
kind of very.
Yep, so they do have, EMC's always had a dividend program
There you go.
within the school book of business, but you had to be 3 years. The company had to have good losses in 3 years, and so did your school. And as of right now, everything's looking pretty good, so hopefully things continue that way, and they're able to give out some dividends next year. For a while, we kind of got spoiled. It felt like almost now this has probably been 10 years ago, but where it seemed like the dividends were there almost every year, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that. But, so hopefully, looking at that moving forward, that would also be a bonus as well, so.
What do you need from us other than, hey, it's 138, 710? That's what it is. You want me to do something I can perhaps maybe skin a few numbers off of that? I mean, what directive do you need?
Yep, I mean,
from us?
all I would need is the statement of values signed by you and then the terrorism rejection form. On the back of that, just signed by you, and we can mark those off if you guys decide we don't want to insure those few properties. We can just cross that off and just sign that, and then we send that in. So,
And then whatever
Yep.
minimal dollars that perhaps maybe would
Yep.
accrue, then that would come down that amount.
correct.
I mean, the totality of maybe taking some of those off, I mean, it wasn't more than.
It's $500-600 bucks.
Yeah.
But and then
Might be
if
down
we're
to
adding
30
the
even.
playground equipment on, it might almost just
Be a wash.
be a wash. Yep.
I don't know, that's up to you guys. You're the elected patrons. I mean, is it worth the time and the effort, or do you want to see some of that stuff not carry coverage, the ticket booth, your blue shed, your crow's nest, I mean,
And then the track. Those were the four
and the
things.
track,
Right.
yeah.
Hey, was it that we talked about those four mainly?
And
then the property and the three,
yeah,
the
the
our
business
home and the
personal
two-
property and the
Our home and the two county schools.
yeah.
Well, I don't know that I'd mess with the track, I guess, in my opinion, but the other 3 or 4, doesn't make any sense to
When you're not-
pay for them if we're not gonna collect anything, so.
I would agree with that. So those three.
Yeah, well, those, that'd be six.
And then the sign is 30-something out
30
front
something.
and yeah,
I mean, because the deductibles are 50.
50.
right.
Is it per building is 50?
Yes, 75 on wind and hail. Yep.
I mean, if we sign off and accept that and take off those particular components of it and
About 7 things. we
call
take
it
off.
good, I mean, is
I
that?
forgot about the sign outside.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
7 things, wasn't
Do you want me to check on the 90% insurance or
John,
not?
yeah, I don't have a problem with that. For just.
I mean, I can check
Yeah.
and see if they would allow us to go to 90% on that, which,
Let's see how much it would be.
Yeah.
yeah,
If they allow it, yeah.
I would guess it's gonna be around that 10 grand just by the figures, the cost per million would be right around that, but I can see if they would be willing to do that and get a number at least, so. But,
Okay.
all right, thank you guys.
Right. All right, we'll move to discussion item G, approve, or it says approve.
Sorry.
Ethan Parkson financial
Discuss.
agreement. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, so just
It
discuss
can be
the
approved at the end of it,
financial
but
agreement, yeah.
If anybody had any questions about that cooperative, that's, we brought that, one of the questions that transpired out of the survey that was done, some of the inequities amongst the two school districts as far as availability of the programs, who was paying for what for the programs, how much were they paying for the programs, support of the programs. So that's when Mr. Bruning, myself, Mr. Hawkins, Ms. Mary Byer, Craig's counterpart, and Ethan, we got together. We spent a couple hours on this and going over this, and this is what the creation was and the conversation amongst the administration and the business managers as to present to both boards as to how to go about sharing the concepts of the expenses of the programs. And the overall cooperative agreement, I know it addresses more than just the areas of financial support, but it also addresses a lot of the other, I guess, things that people perhaps question, you know, within a cooperative. So if you look at the totality of the probably, I don't know, 10, 13, 14 different articles, so to speak, this particular document outlines that whole process, as well as captures how the financials are gonna be accounted for in that. So we sent it to Ethan. Mary, or Craig and I visited with Mary last week again, kind of went through some of this stuff, and I think he's totally on board. I did not hear back from Mr. Hawkins about anything disagreeable as I asked them to do. I mean, I put it together, I created it based on Craig's notes and Mary's notes for the most part, and a few notes that I had, and this is what we came up with. So if there's particular questions about the cooperative agreement overall, or any of the financial components in Article 2 as to how it's being accounted for, you know, now's the time, I guess. Other than that, eventually what I would ask, I mean, you're discussing it, there's no discussion, I would like to, you know, say this is what we're doing too. So. You'll see some redundancy, I suppose, in some of them sports, because that's how we address some of those sports. You'll see those 2 wrestling programs as to the percentage based on how that was outlined in there. I think that there's some clarity to that. It makes perfect sense, the examples that were put in there, you know, as far as the percentages and who's gonna be accountable for what there, so.
How come you did this one per participant, but like these 2 aren't? These are 50/50?
It's the numbers that are involved, the participation
Just
numbers.
how
that
many,
are-
like
well,
that is
yeah.
a bigger group of
Yeah.
kids?
So we sat down and had that conversation. We looked at the rosters, cross-country, honestly, fairly equal. Track, I know there's an 80-40 component to that, but, I mean, actually, honestly, their suggestion was, we just think that should be 50/50. So don't get too caught up in the weeds on the track program as far as the totality of numbers one school district had versus the other. The wrestling, however, because of the numbers involved, a greater portion, at least in the boys program, you know, is our numbers. And the girls program is still, you know, taking baby steps to get going. And at that time, it was, you know, 2 and 2, but.
If you, I think the most, Ethan, maybe 3 or 4 kids is the
Yeah.
most we've ever had to build them for in wrestling.
In the wrestling. So therefore,
For boys.
yeah, so let's say that it was a $25,000 program. Well, to the 2 kids that they had into it, they had to cough up 12.5. That was understandable inequity in that, you know, where we're bearing the expense, the greater expense of it, because they're our kids.
Mhm.
So that's the differentiated there. And softball was pretty much an even split, so.
I
in
mean,
fact, they
the
had
only
no-
thing I can think of is that right now that is even, but like someday it might not be.
Yeah.
But I suppose you can always amend the agreement if
Yeah,
at some
absolutely, and that's the
point
whole premise.
something
Yeah.
changes, you can amend it, I guess, but.
Yeah, I mean, if those programs swell, you know, to program size between boys or girls wrestling, I mean, it's like, you know, they got half, we got half, then certainly it's a conversation. And we had that conversation as admin too, and they said absolutely, so.
So then this says here, it's an 80-20, meaning because we own the track, we pay 80, they pay 20 to have a maintenance.
So that's the, kind of the last component of that, if people, and that's a good segue, Jill, that you brought that up. So when you're looking at that track component, you know, that the physical property, where it sits, what it is, you know, when it was built, things like that is essentially, or conceptually was all, that responsibility taken upon by the school district, Parkson School District. So the concept moving forward, let's go back to that $170,000 it's gonna take to replace that track. Well, they're using it, right? So I think we agreed, within that admin meeting, so to speak, as to what would be, I mean, we had a tough time, what's the number? I don't know, I mean, we.
But we didn't have it, they felt they should pony up some of it. They didn't have any issues with it.
Because they haven't, and that's been part of the survey stuff, that they didn't, you know, they get a free ride out of this deal, and the Parks and Schools just have to eat this. Well, not really eating it, I mean, you're still providing an opportunity for your kids, and you have a track. I mean, be thankful you got that opportunity. But they did recognize the need that they have to have some share of responsibility in the financials. So when it comes time to replace that track, okay, how much of that should they be accountable for? So whatever 20,000 or 20% of 170,000 was, I mean, we talked about that number and they didn't see that as an unreasonable request on their part. Whether they budgeted for it or it happens 7 years from now, you just do it and, okay, Ethan, give us whatever the equivalent of that is.
Okay. I was just curious if that's what it meant. I wanted to make sure I
Yep.
understood.
Yep. And I'll be honest with you, this going to them, you know, that, while we agreed as admin, you know, that board is sitting here just like you're sitting here. That 20%, they might be like, yeah, I don't know. So we'll see what he comes back with. So, but every other provision of it, if we're in agreement with it, that's kind of, we had to start somewhere. And that was the question, who's paying for what and how much, so. But the fact that he never got back to me and said, hey, I think that's a little rich. You know, and when we talked to Mary, she gets it. And she said, she didn't say, well, I think that's a little rich. So. But it governs everything that we do with them. Every sport is addressed, that we have a cooperative sponsorship for the South Dakota High School Activity Association.
Yeah, so they can just add on if something ever needed to be.
We'll get to that point, so.
Okay.
No motion tonight, we're just a reading type of deal, and they're gonna read it, and then we'll approve it
Yeah,
next
I mean, I
month.
said, you know, conversation about it and the fact that I forgot that they had to come back. I mean, they could say, well, we're not doing this 80-20 thing. You know, so conversation, if we had issues, you guys had issues with it, but if it's something that nobody has an issue with it, then I would bring the cooperative agreement back in the July meeting for approval.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yep.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so we'll move to action items. Action item A is to approve financial report, the May financial report.
Does anybody have any questions on anything on there? The big tax payments were in.
They were, great.
You can see on the line, you know, the first line there, 700 and some thousand in the, from Hutchinson County. This last month, so a good portion of it. Capital outlay is healthy, the sped is still a little low, but there's IDA money out there yet that I gotta collect, so. Still looks better than it did the last month after the taxes. And there's not really any expenditures coming out. Our second half payment of, for the James Valley is already done, so you won't see that at the end of the month or anything like that. So it's not, I don't foresee a lot of big ticket sped items at the end of the month that we missed.
Anybody have anything else? All right, just need a motion to approve.
So move.
I'll second it.
Moved by Schoenfelder, seconded by Nebel. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
All right, action item B is to vote on the Ethan Parkston Track Cross Country Cooperative. The school board will vote to either retain or dissolve the current track cross country sports cooperative with the Ethan School District. Do you just want to take a vote? Do you guys have questions or comments or discussion, anything that you want, anything you have?
It's been another 3-month journey.
You need a motion then, I assume?
Yeah, to either retain or dissolve.
I'll
Right.
make a motion to retain the current
Okay,
Ethan Parks and Track Cooperative.
moved by Leishner,
I'll second it.
second by Nebel to retain the track and cross-country cooperative with Ethan. Any other discussion?
Can we talk, before we say
Any other
yes,
discussion, yep.
can we just talk about middle school versus high school?
Mr. Fisher, yeah.
I feel like,
That was in your agreement,
oh, it would be separate?
that that's the way we would propose.
It would be separated. So we would just have middle school, they would have their own
Well,
middle
there's
school?
two ways to do that.
Okay, I maybe misunderstood that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The question is to whether actually separate, meaning there's, meaning two ways, is that we could simply just pay 2 entry fees to Wagner Junior High track meet, and then we can go down there and run 2 entire teams. So we have 2 entire teams in every relay. We have 2 entire
6
team-
individuals in
6
the-
individuals in every, in order to increase the
Yeah.
opportunity. The proposal would be, they still come down here, they're riding the bus, the kids are practicing, you know,
Okay.
doing whatever. It's more about the opportunity for them to participate and let kids find their niche, so to speak. But we were somewhat limited by only going Ethan Parkston at the middle school level, because we couldn't really expand all our opportunities for all those kids to do that. Now, if we take 2 teams down there, even if 7th and 8th grade divisions, we can have 2 7th grade, 2 7th grade teams, 2 8th grade teams. I mean, so that was one concept in how to go about doing that. Or, I think the biggest concern there was if you totally separate, Ethan runs separate, just Ethan kids, Parkton runs separate as Parkson kids. I think that's on the table. I don't know that we have to get too far in the weeds on that. The biggest issue there is distinguishability at the middle school level. Of course, you know, we have track uniforms, so, but are they running as Ethan? Well, you know, they're
Gotta wear
running in an
Orange one or
E-P,
yellow.
an E-Pash, or they buy a T-shirt, and Craig assured me, well, they think they're buying T-shirts anyway, so
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not. Adam, if you want to speak, I mean,
Yep, that's what they're doing.
that's how they do it anyway, so that can, either way can be done. It's more about increasing the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay,
And those junior high entry fees are minimal.
okay.
Sometimes they're 30, sometimes they're 50. I think the biggest one was 75. Platts was the highest entry fee.
Okay, but that doesn't really fix the issue of that several people felt like there was not enough coaching. There's still the same amount of kids coming here, still the same amount of kids competing. That doesn't change how many coaches there are. We still have the same amount of coaches.
But, yeah, and I think that conversation needs to be had at an admin level about the practice of having a high school meet and we cancel junior high practice. It's about making sure that that practice stays scheduled, and a couple, whoever has to stay back out of that 5 in order to run a practice, conduct a practice, and doing that. Now, you're saying, well, geez, they're gonna work with every one of those kids. I mean, I get that. I mean, that's a good notion. I mean, that people would question if that's even plausible or not, but, I mean, it's a step in the right direction rather than just canceling. It's still about having an experience with those kids to try to work with. Are you gonna work with all of them that day? Probably not. I mean, but you can get some things done. But I think we're in a little bit of a habit of taking all 5 of our coaches to a varsity event and leaving the junior high kids.
Is there a middle school boys coach and a middle school girls coach?
It's all by event.
Well, the way that they organize them though, I mean,
It's by event.
yeah, but they do, like Brittany takes charge of the boys
Mhm.
and Carrie takes charge of the girls.
At the middle school level.
As a middle school, yes. That's what your question was, right?
Yeah.
As far as registering them, yeah.
Mhm.
And so they're doing a lot of the evaluating, I believe.
How
And
many
that,
kids?
and that part of it is riding the meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who goes to what, who does what event?
Yeah, I guess that's the busy work of it, but I'm talking about the interaction with kids so that they don't go to a meet without ever having practiced something or ever having done it, because that happens.
Well, the only way to do that is add more coaches.
Or not have 6th graders there. Because Ethan didn't allow their 6th graders there.
Right.
And that, it's in there somewhere. I wrote it in
It
there.
does say, yeah, I saw it said something about at coach's discretion, or if the need is there, or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And whether that's a combined effort or an individual effort, it's still just a matter of a ratio of students to coach,
It is.
right?
And that's where if you really want to lessen that and get that, what you're asking, what you're pointing out, Jill, which is totally true, the only way to do that is add more adults,
Mhm.
and that costs money. So, I mean, I get it, that's one of the main concerns, complaints, so to speak, but I don't, there's 5.
How many, well, but they had more volunteers that they also,
Yep, they had 2 throws coaches.
Problem there again,
that they're compensating.
problem
out
with
of
that, and I get to choose what I want. If I'm a volunteer, guess where I'm going?
to the varsity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know,
Because then
that's
that
where
kind
you-
of like, then you're not really building a
No,
team.
I don't.
You're just working with your varsity kids and you're not really building your middle school kids to make them better so that they can compete.
Oh.
But whatever. I just was curious if that, just wanted to make sure to say it out loud because I feel like there will be questions about that, so.
I think one of the steps in the right direction is to one of two ways. The preferable way, so they keep coming, they keep practicing, doing their things, and to expand the number of opportunities for all kids at that middle school level, is we start paying doubling up on the entry fees. You know, when we go to these middle school events or these junior high events and run 2 7th grade teams, run 2 8th grade teams, because now you're just expanding that whole opportunity for kids who didn't, because you
Yeah.
were limited in only
Yeah.
one team, so.
Yeah.
I mean, so that, to me, that's a step in the right direction. Does it probably solve the issue in entirety? Probably not. But it is, I think, something to put in place, see how it goes, and then see where we still fall short in that. And if it really comes down to a conversation that we have that many middle school kids, then maybe we need to look at another body. And that's all there is to it.
I mean, with that many kids, you almost should have 2 coaches there for practice.
I would agree.
Even if you just have like a boys coach and a girls coach or whatever, or a running coach and an event coach, or however they want to
Exactly.
split it, but. Okay,
So we still need a vote.
yeah.
So I had a question on the voting, so voting tonight on approving working together, then if they don't agree to this, then we're back to square one.
The co-op stays, this is about retaining that co-ops, and we're
Right.
moving that because there's timelines there that we have to
Okay.
confer with. The South Dakota Activity Association says
Right.
you need to make a decision
I
by
get that.
such and such a time. Now, this cooperative agreement, if they got issues with that, to me, that's something that just continues to evolve or work our way issues, we discussion, go through it to the point of when we get through our problems, whatever the problems may be,
Okay.
then we'll adopt that. But I don't see where that's going to,
There
You know.
wasn't a lot of changes to the, other than the track, paying for that percentage or whatever. Other than that, it was minimal changes.
minimal, it
from what
brought a
our
lot of clarity,
practice
but it was clarity, and now it's on, now you see it in paper.
Right.
Yes.
We never really had those documents to substantiate as to what the methodology was and the process was, or even what was included. What are you calling an expense? And some of them, this was paid for, and that one, that wasn't paid for. And this one, that one was paid for, but this one, that one and that one and that one were paid for, but this one wasn't. I mean, so that's what we had clarified in
Yep.
that agreement, so.
So the other issue that did come up in the survey was that some people made the comment that they wanted to split because then our kids could compete at a B level, but just so that like the public hears it, it sounds like we'll go back to A anyway, so that resolves itself, right?
We'd have one more year of
B.
Class B,
Yeah,
and then it's looking, all things are pointing to us going to back to Class A after this one year.
okay,
So
'Cause-
25, 26 school year that we're moving into,
B,
if you dissolve this thing, 1 year B,
yeah,
in both of those programs, and then the following year, because of the threshold of 88,
yeah,
being classification for A to B, right now, we're tracking in our grades 9, 10, and 11 a year from now, and that April, when we release that alignment, we're, even with the free and reduced factor that they incorporated here 2 years ago, we don't have enough free and reduced to take our number from 100 down to 88.
okay. I just wanted to say it out loud so everybody heard it,
absolutely.
because that was an issue that people were concerned about, so.
And that was shared with the coaching staff as well. There was
Okay.
conversation when we looked at things a year and a half ago, that perhaps maybe we could get away with another cycle, another 2-year cycle, and stay in Class B, but that didn't stay because we had some kids in those grades
Okay.
show up.
Okay, so we still need to vote, all right.
So-
Yep. So we just need all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And if anybody asks, Mr. Thuringer asked me to publicly declare he would vote to retain the cooperative, so.
All right, so we'll just take a Small break to clear the room and we'll move into executive session.